Hey guys, what's up? This is Brett. Welcome to this week's episode of Friday on the Turntable. As you can tell from the title, today I'm talking about Lou Reed, his passing, his influence, and his musical legacy. For those of you that have been following my channel for a while, you've noticed that I've featured Lou Reed's Berlin album in the past, and as well as Nico's Desert Shore album, and I often bring up Lou Reed and the Velvet Underground in various one form or another. So first off, yeah, huge loss to the world, both in a musical and just in a Lou Reed is such a whether you're familiar with him or not, his influence on pop culture and on music in general is enormous. And I first discovered Lou Reed probably, I'm guessing it was sometime in the late 80s, maybe 1988. And it's funny how you discover things, because as a kid, of course, I heard Walk on the Wild Side, but like things you hear on the radio, you don't, you hear it as one song and one isolated moment. But when I first really tuned into Lou Reed was after hearing Jane's Addiction cover the Velvet Underground's Rock and Roll on their self-titled 1987 album, and hearing their version of Rock and Roll and seeing in the credits that it was done by Lou Reed. My brother and I both, we went into a mode of finding out more about this guy named Lou Reed, and which led us into the Velvet Underground. And I remember the first thing that we bought by the Velvet Underground was the VU cassette, which was various outtakes and stuff from an abandoned album that the band had recorded in 1969. And that was the first thing I got. Later we got a Velvet Underground Greatest Hits, and then that took us all through all deep into his catalog. And so I've been probably a fan of Lou Reed for the past 25 years, and his influence musically was also a huge presence, I think, with the Velvet Underground in his solo career. It was a great example of how music didn't have to be technically difficult to be great. His writing was always on a very street level, simple narrative, and it was kind of a benchmark that I've used in my own writing, because the way I naturally write is in layers and in masks and covered, and Lou Reed's was very upfront and straight and to the point, and I always saw that as a great influence of how aspects of my own writing I wanted to try to achieve. And yeah, it's his death has just this whole week has been just a full submersion into revisiting all this stuff, which I do all the time, but to put it in perspective now with his death and what that all means, I think is huge. I was very fortunate enough to get to meet Lou Reed after a performance when he played here in Tempe, Arizona, at a venue called the Marquee, which I've actually gotten to play at a few times. And it was on June 19th, 2003, and it was when he was on tour for his The Raven album. Phenomenal show. He had Anthony from Anthony and the Johnsons on backing vocals. And afterwards, my brother and I hung out back behind the venue and waited around for a half an hour, and the back door opened, and there was probably a group of maybe 10 of us back there, and the door opened, and he was probably 50 feet away, and instead of just walking onto the tour bus, which he very well could have, he walked all the way over. I shook his hand. I told him that his music meant a lot to me, and he was a huge influence, and then he actually signed the poster of the show for me. If you look really closely, you can see a squiggle, and that is Lou Reed's signature on there. So that was a huge moment for both me and my brother, because Lou Reed, such a huge influence on both of us musically, and yeah, when I think, when people refer to certain people as being these American poets in music, people like Bob Dylan and stuff, as a teenager, I was always so much more drawn to the writing of Lou Reed. I think, if you play some of the songs like Heroin and I'm Waiting for the Man, and when they were written, and then what else was going on in popular music, it was such a, I think he was pretty revolutionary in what he was saying, and I was really drawn into that as a teenager, versus a lot of the other stuff that was around, that came from that mid-60s period. So, hope I'm giving this justice here. So I have a lot of stuff I want to show you guys and a lot of ground to cover. I figured I'd do a snippet of his extensive catalog here and do a quick discussion on some stuff. So here we go. The Lou Reed, in his earlier musical career, he had a band called the Shades, which turned into the Jades, and this is a 7-inch on Norton Records, which featured So Blue and Leave Here For Me, which were 2 songs. They were done in 1958, and they have that kind of 50s, Earth Angel-esque sound of kind of doo-wop, and then side 2 is credited to his full name, Louis Reed, and there were some demos that he did, I think, in 1962. This is a really cool little piece here that I have on a 7-inch. For those of you, I'm sure everyone knows by now that didn't associate the name Lou Reed with Velvet Underground, but the Velvet Underground was Lou Reed's band that he formed with John Cale, and this is obviously the first one, the Velvet Underground and Nico, the Banana album, the Andy Warhol album. This is one of my absolute favorite albums of all time. It's such an important album to me. Every song is amazing. And, just to shout out a few tracks, of course, Heroin, I'll Be Your Mirror. And this is the only album that featured Nico on 3 tracks. She sang on Femme Fatale, I'll Be Your Mirror, and All Tomorrow's Parties. Every song is excellent, and I think there's a famous quote, I think it was maybe by Thurston Moore of Sonic Youth, where I think it was him, said, this album only sold 25,000 copies, but everyone who bought it went out and started a band. Huge influence, the droniness, like I said before, the street level singing, the lyrics, everything about it was just so beautifully done. It was so minimally done, and John Cale's viola, the drones, and the imperfections in the music. When you think about, I think it's on I'll Be Your Mirror, in the beginning there's the chord progression passes 4 times, and on the 4th pass there's this one bass note that hits out of time. And the fact that they left that in there and didn't correct it, I just find it so, it always makes me smile every time I hear it, because I find it so typical of, of the imperfections in the music and how those imperfections create beauty, and I think that's so important. Another album that needs to be discussed, although it's not a Velvet Underground album or a Lou Reed album, it's Nico's first solo album. After she left the Velvet Underground, she recorded her debut, Chelsea Girl, and it's notable because it's notable because it's an incredible album, but it's also notable because Lou Reed had written or co-written, I think it was 4 of the tracks on here, including the title track, Chelsea Girls, as well as playing guitar, and Sterling Morrison and John Cale, also from the Velvet Underground, also appear on this album. Fantastic. Also needs to be in your collection. The second Velvet Underground album, White Light, White Heat, noisy but beautiful at moments. Sister Ray, the 17-minute closing track, which Joy Division covered on the Still album, a live version of it. White Light, White Heat, just great. Lady Godiva's Operation, which John Cale sang. Fantastic. Here She Comes Now, I think Nirvana did a cover of that. And I'll be mentioning various bands covering because it just shows the wide influence that the Velvet Underground had. The self-titled album, this was from 1969. John Cale left the band at this point. Doug Yule came in. Candy Says, amazing. What Goes On, Pale Blue Eyes, one of Lou Reed's probably most beautifully iconic tracks. I love the guitar solo on I'm Set Free, and the Mo Tucker song After Hours, beautiful. Some Kind of Love, What Goes On. This is just outstanding. In between that album and their final album, they went and recorded, as I said earlier, in 1969. Those sessions were abandoned or discarded. They were eventually found later and released on 2 various things. But for Record Store Day, it was a couple of years back. I think it was for Black Friday 2011. Foggy Notion, that was one of the tracks, as well as I Can't Stand It is backed on the B side, and I Can't Stand It ended up being the opening track when Lou Reed re-recorded it on his first solo album. So there's a cool little single there. So the final Velvet Underground album with Lou Reed, there was Squeeze, which came out after, but I'm not gonna talk about that because it's not really a part of it. So Loaded was their final one. This has Rock and Roll, which was, like I said, the song that really turned me on to the Velvet Underground. Sweet Jane, another iconic Velvet Underground song. I Found a Reason, which is a great track as well. Mo Tucker didn't actually play on this one. She was pregnant, so she was on like a maternity leave, so they had a couple other people play drums on it, although she is credited on there as the drummer because she was still in the band. Yeah, and Lou Reed actually left the Velvet Underground, I think 3 months before that actually even was released. So, but it's still a great album. Probably my least favorite out of the 4 Velvet Underground albums. My favorite being the first one. Second favorite being the self-titled third, followed by White Light, White Heat, and then Loaded. But I'm going to try to keep my talking to a minimal here because I could spend a lot of time talking. So then Lou Reed put out his first solo album, 1972, which had 8 of those unreleased songs re-recorded, and then there was 2 new songs, one of them being Berlin, which he ended up re-recording on his 3rd album. So here's the one that most people turn to as their favorite Lou Reed album. This is Transformer, produced by David Bowie and Mick Ronson. Mick Ronson being David Bowie's guitar player on Ziggy Stardust and Aladdin Sane and so forth. Phenomenal. Famous photograph by Mick Rock on the cover. You know, you have Vicious, which was the opening track on there. I remember reading an article where Lou Reed, Andy Warhol was telling Lou Reed, you need to write a song called Vicious or something. And Lou said, what kind of vicious? And Andy said, I don't know, like you hit someone with a flower. And that's ended up being one of the main lines in the song. Perfect Day, phenomenal. Walk on the Wild Side, Satellite of Love. Just, yeah, wow. That's a record that should be in everyone's collection. But my absolute favorite Lou Reed solo album is 1973's Berlin. Phenomenal, kind of a concept album following a storyline. If you want to hear me elaborate more, I'll have a link down below that for my Friday on the Turntable feature that I did back earlier this year on this exclusively on this album. One of probably my favorite Lou Reed songs, Caroline Says Too, is on this record. Yeah. Bob Ezrin produced it, and if you guys are familiar with Bob Ezrin, he produced Pink Floyd's The Wall, but this was 6 years before that. So that is Berlin right there. And back for my birthday last month, or in early September, my dad had picked this out for me. And this was a concert when Lou Reed did tour, and he performed the Berlin album. And this show is, you know, Lou Reed really never performed a song the same way twice. If you watch various concert films, they always have they've always evolved into, you know, various different versions. But this recreation of the album is just spectacular. He has Anthony again on backing vocals, and Bob Ezrin's actually on stage conducting, so they have the strings and the flutes, and it is seriously just incredible. I watched this Sunday after I heard of his death, and wow, it hit me hard. It's just incredible. I'll have a link for this so you guys can pick this up because it's out there for very cheap, like $5-6. Way highly recommend it. Another thing I want to show you about the Velvet Underground is actually before, back in 1995, I remember buying this. I don't have the box, it's somewhere, but this was the Peel Slowly and See 5 CD box set of the Velvet Underground, and this reissued all of the Velvet Underground albums with bonus tracks. So you had live versions, you had the unreleased mixes of the self-titled album and the closet mix. So it had different mixes, it had unreleased recordings, and the first CD was from the early demos from the early 60s, maybe it was 64. They recreated let's see if it shows a date here. Oh, I can't see it. But it has the original recreation of the tape box that they recorded, and early versions of Venus and Furs and Heroin and Waiting for the Man, All Tomorrow's Parties. This is a cool box set. I'm sure it's out there and you can get it, but I'm really happy to have that, and that was I've listened to that so much. Okay, let's keep going then. Next I want to show you is Coney Island Baby, which came out in '76, and the title track on this one is another one of the first Lou Reed tracks I really fell in love with. I Want to Play Football for the Coach just made me think of being in school and playing Pop Warner football, and it's just such a great track. That's Coney Island Baby. 1978, Street Hassle came out. Has the really epic long title track, Street Hassle, which has 3 movements, beautiful strings in there, and one of the final movements of the song actually has Bruce Springsteen doing some spoken word over that. And Simple Minds did a great cover of Street Hassle on their Sparkle in the Rain album. Another good version to seek out. Same year, I got to talk about this one, Live Take No Prisoners. This was a double Lou Reed. You know, it's a concert, but it's also like a spoken word because there's extended versions of songs, and he just slyly just puts in, along with the verses of the song, all these like commentaries, and talks about various celebrities, and it's just out of control. And it's if you can pick that up, it's really a good one to have in your collection. Rock and Roll Animal being another one from '74, I think '74 is another great live album by his. But yeah. Oh yeah, got a little stack of CDs as well here. Told you I got a lot to cover. Sally Can't Dance, which came out in '74. I wanted to point this out because the track Kill Your Sons, phenomenal. Roz Williams from Christian Death did a great cover on a live Christian Death album. And the final track, Billy, is also excellent because it's this, it isn't talked about very much, but it's a song where Lou Reed talks about someone he went to high school with and how they both chose different paths in life. That guy went off to Vietnam, and how his whole life, just the kind of dichotomy between their two existence. And it's a beautiful track, and it doesn't get talked about very much, but it's great. Billy, that is, off of Sally Can't Dance. 1982, The Blue Mask. You can see that same cover from same picture from Transformer, taken by Mick Rock. Opening track, My House, is a song that's written as a tribute to Lou Reed. A huge influence on Lou Reed was his at Syracuse University, his English teacher, Delmore Schwartz, who's kind of most famous for a short story they wrote called In Dreams Become Responsibility. And he was a huge influence on Lou Reed. And U2 actually, in their song Acrobat on Achtung Baby, they actually quote that title, In Dreams Become Responsibility. So it's he had an influence on a lot of various people. And The Blue Mask, that title track, is all written for as tribute. Like I said, Waves of Fear, killer Lou Reed track, very intense. The Day John Kennedy Died is another good one. Blue Mask. Let's see here. New York. 1989. This is a fantastic album. I remember when this one came out. I actually have it on cassette back there as well. Romeo Had Juliet. I pulled out my 7-inch for that, backed with Busload of Faith. This album is very intense. It's very lyrically, like I said before, just very straightforward. Dirty Boulevard. It's whether you can call Lou Reed as a pop songwriter is very subjective, because it's very out of what I consider mainstream pop. But another beautiful thing that I always appreciated about the Velvet Art and Lou Reed is how they would have these darker subject matters, but they put them to catchy melodies. So you're listening to this song, and they have a good hook in the chorus, yet the subject matter is really dark. Dirty Boulevard being one of those songs. Halloween Parade, Christmas in February, Last Great American Whale, There Is No Time, another great track. Just There Is No Time is just a list of all the things wrong with I guess the world, and it's New York's intense record. I don't have it with me here, but Songs for Drella came out after that in 1990, and that was the reunification of Lou Reed with John Cale. And they recorded an album as a tribute to Andy Warhol. Andy Warhol's passing. Songs for Drella. Drella was a nickname that Andy Warhol had, meaning a combination of Dracula and Cinderella. That album, there's a song on there called Open House. There are no stars in the New York sky, they're all on the ground. That song just gets me every time. It's a fantastic album. My brother turned it on to me because he was a huge fan of that album, and it took me a little while to get into it. My brother had the VHS of it, and which had a live performance of them doing the album. But yeah, I'd love to find that one on vinyl. Magic and Loss, 1992. I remember when this one came out. Also, it's an album about the passing of two of Lou Reed's friends, and it's really intense. And I had a friend I remember years and years ago who told me that when his mom was battling cancer, that he was just listening to this over and over again. So whenever I see this album cover, I always think of that. The track "What's Good," which was a single off that, and sort of Damocles. The fifth track is, it's so intense. The closing track, Magic and Loss. Highly recommend that. I'd love to find a copy of that one on vinyl. Sorry. And then, oh, and I should mention, I did get to see John Cale perform once. He opened for the Creatures, actually, which was a band of Susie from Susie and the Banshees with Budgie, who was her husband at the time, who was Susie's drummer. And that was in 1998 at a place called Gibson's in Tempe. And I think they might have done Venus and Furs together that night. My memory of that isn't very clear. But lastly, or a couple more things I want to share with you guys. I know this is going on very long, but it needs to be done. The Raven, this is the one I saw him live for, which was a lot of interpretations of Edgar Allan Poe's lyrics, various guest artists on this one, but there's a track on here that is kind of, for me, is Lou Reed's swan song, and that is called The Vanishing Act. And if you're unfamiliar with that track, really seek it out. And I'll have a link down below. Actually, on Sunday night, I created a playlist in Spotify. I think it's a 30-song playlist, which is my kind of picks from Velvet Underground's category and Lou Reed's solo category. So I'll have a link down to that below as well. And Vanishing Act is on there, and it is really one of his most amazing songs. All right, one more thing I want to show you guys. If you really want to read up more about Lou Reed, the Velvet Underground, this is a book I got a couple of years back from a publisher sent me to review on my blog, which I did. So there will be a review for that. I'm going to have a big links for everything here, and for all these albums, etc. But this is put out by Jawbone Press, and it's White Light, White Heat, The Velvet Underground Day by Day by Richie Unterberger, and it goes through in various detail, day by day, everything the band did, live shows, set lists. I mean, there's tons and tons of beautiful black and white photographs. It's very extensive. It is like the Velvet Underground Bible, and like I said, it goes through, recording sessions. A lot of these photographs I'd never seen before. Highly recommend it. I'll put a link down for that as well. So, all right, guys. Thanks for watching. Yeah. Hope you guys enjoyed.